Hello, my name is Ed Klotzbier. The Division of External Relations manages philanthropy and strategic partnerships, public affairs and communications, including internal communications. You are most likely familiar with the Monday memo and the Friday in case you missed it. As we continue to develop additional tools to communicate with our campus community, especially staff and faculty, we are embarking on a series of town halls. Thank you for joining us today for the first town hall of 2021. Today we'll be hearing from Chancellor Juan Sanchez Munoz, Academic Senate Chair Robin DeLugan, and Staff Assembly President Yesenia Curiel. Future town halls will include campus senior leaders on specific topics, including Interim CFO Kurt Schneer with budget updates, and Associate Chancellor Daniel Matos representing recommendations from our Valuing Black Lives Task Force, among other topics and issues important to our campus community. We have asked for questions from the staff and faculty for this session, and we'll get to as many as we can, but first, we want to hear opening remarks from the Chancellor, Dr. DeLugan, and Ms. Curiel. We will also post a recording of this town hall online, and we'll share the link in next week's Monday memo for folks who are not able to join us today. With that, let me turn the program over to Chancellor Munoz. Chancellor?
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us. And I hope many of you had a restful and restorative holiday break with friends and family and those that you care for. It's a privilege to be here today for this town hall and offer a few remarks with the other leaders of the campus and to give those that are interested in the direction of the university a sense of the movement that we're moving toward in order to begin the semester and then prepare ourselves for the summer and then the fall. So welcome to 2021, to the start of a spring semester, a new spring semester, in some ways very different spring semester. UC Merced, I'd like to remind those listening, is indeed poised for better days ahead. And it is in no small measure due to the work of all of you. Most important is the announcement. I hope that some of you have read that we will be working toward primarily an in-person instructional delivery this fall. Students and their families have expressed individually, collectively, the desire to resume the traditional college experience and in person through residential living communities, access to faculty and facilities, and we of course want to afford them that to the extent possible this fall. It's critically important to our students, current and future, that we resume in-person operations as soon as possible and with confidence. And with confidence in the Academic Senate, we will be hearing from them in just a few minutes, as well as the leadership of the Assembly. And many others like Dr. Sarah Fry are working to help lead this effort. As you recall, also this last fall, despite the pandemic, the university had its largest enrollment of over 9,000 students. This is a historic high for UC Merced. We've reached another milestone this spring. More than 30,000 applicants from prospective undergraduates have applied to join us this fall, thousands more than we received a year ago. This is very encouraging, again, and reflective of our being poised for even better days ahead. We're also seeing a striking uptick from out-of-state students. I think that that's not unrelated to ongoing rankings of UC Merced as a top public research university. Also, we've seen an increase in applicants from Texas, where I was for a great many years, but also an uptick and an increase in applicants from across our region, including our own school district, high school district here in the city of Merced, and a substantial increase in very, very talented community college students who hope to continue and complete their education with us here at UC Merced. Provost Greg Canfield is leading us through the university's first ever institutional strategic planning exercise. I hope everyone has had a chance to engage in this process and contribute their thoughts and ideas and their sense of priorities to what will be the first ever strategic plan for UC Merced. And we hope to receive some additional indication of the direction of that planning process and exercise later this spring, ideally in March. This plan, we hope, will be our strategic sort of roadmap, if you will, to lead the kinds of investments we make related to not just financial investments, but related to enrollment enrollment management, student success, academic planning and programs, faculty support, research, facility, as we position ourselves into the future, and that we become the university that we hope to be, not just for our region, not just for California, but indeed for the country. All of this to say that UC Merced, again, is increasingly positioning itself to reach greater heights, and this is all absolutely thanks to your work, your sacrifice, your efforts, and your advocacy. Of course, we continue to call on everyone to do your part to maintain this momentum, and challenges will not lessen because of the calendar has changed from 20 to 21 to 22. As you know, universities, including ours, are facing significant financial challenges because of the pandemic-induced economy. We are encouraged with the recent announcement of stimulus dollars, and UC Merced will certainly benefit from those. Interim CFO Kurt Schneer, well known to us at UC Merced, will update the community in future town halls. We were able to temporarily avoid, I will remind you, we were able to temporarily avoid furloughs this year. The leadership was adamant about protecting our most valuable asset, and that is the people at UC Merced. However, moving forward, we need to maintain our discipline moving forward and ensure that we remain in a position financially to not impact those that work for us. As you know, the country is facing a shocking political disruption last week. Everyone was certainly paying attention to what took place in our nation's capital, and the most divided it has been in perhaps half a century, if not more. Higher education, as we sent out a message, higher education has a critical role in creating an environment of civic literacy, not merely for our students, but for our world. And we must embrace that duty if we are to survive as a nation, and UC Merced and all of you have a vitally important role in that. That includes looking inward. And I will remind you of our Valuing Black Lives Task Force under Associate Vice Chancellor Dania Matos, and who will be examining our community for places and ways that we can also become better. And as she's presented the initial recommendations to the provost and I in December, she will share them with the campus at a future town hall, and then we will set a plan to move on those recommendations and communicate those very clearly to the campus, as each one of those recommendations that we focus on, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, are acted upon. And so finally, I want to say that as an institution, we must be a welcoming and nurturing community for all, where hatred, discrimination has no home, and civil discourse is how we address our disagreements. There is no excuse for doing otherwise. So finally, I want to mention just some folks, and I know that I will not mention everyone, so my apologies in advance for those that I might overlook quite innocently, who are doing exceptional work during these very difficult times. I do want to recognize our Chief Resiliency Officer, Andy Boyd, and he is most certainly resilient. Dr. Thelma Hurd, our Director of Medical Education and everything else medical. She is the definition of other duties as assigned. Our emergency manager, Laura Rodriguez Mascoro, who has done just tremendous work to make sure that we have all of the facilities and personnel we need to safeguard our campus. And in particular, I'd like to just run through the list of Big Cat Heroes. This is an award that we created for just to recognize those who have gone above and beyond to help our campus make it through this very difficult time. And I might mispronounce a few names, so again, I'll apologize. People like Carolyn Frank, Grace Newman, Shaina Bennett, Rupta Sengupta, Lisette Ponce, Justin Hicks, Guillermo Rivas, Kathy Brokaw, John Villavazo, Hannah Anagar, Rachel Peters, Liza Dajlio, Nathan Ibarra, Delina Nogo, Jessica Duffy, Odis Velez, Kaya Ramirez, Rafael Melo, Fiku Kamhan, Jennifer Taylor, Jorge Arroyo, Marissa Alacon, Joseph Garcia, Emily Lynn, Alejandro Guerrero, Alex Hernandez, and Elshan Chandri. These faculty, staff, and students were nominated by their peers, people like you, for recognition for their outstanding work that they did to help us adapt to the pandemic and provide the operations that we need. So they embody the very best of the Bobcat community, and I want to thank them publicly for their efforts. I want to thank all of you for joining us, and I want to thank my colleagues who you will hear from in a minute, because this town hall is truly about the leadership and our efforts, our priorities, and how we work together to lead the university to, as I mentioned earlier, better days ahead. Thank you, Ed. I'll relinquish it back to you.
Thank you, Chancellor. We'll now hear from Dr. Robin DeLugan, Chair of the Academic Senate.
Great. Well, first, Happy New Year, happy 2021, happy new semester, lovely colleagues. I wish it was a more restive and restorative break. And as the Chancellor mentioned, the events in our nation's capital and around the nation certainly have been unsettling and continue to be unsettling for me and probably for you as well. You know, how do we get to a more just and inclusive nation? How do we reach a more perfect union? We can talk about that at the national level, and we can talk about that right here on our campus as well. And I'm sure we all, thank you to the Chancellor for his kind words, have a commitment to that. And when we heard from the big cat heroes, and I know speaking faculty to faculty, many of us have gone above and beyond. This teaching, COVID-19 teaching online, and all the other sort of many Zoom meetings and forums and challenges for faculty with small children working at home, extra stresses on junior faculty. We're really well aware of it. The campus is, the administration is, and the Senate is. So we do have some efforts ongoing, and you'll probably be hearing more soon, is that ongoing conversation, how to mitigate the negative impact of COVID-19 on our faculty. Again, the impact is going to extend beyond this year. It can have longer term impact. And so both at the campus level and at the system-wide academic council level, we are brainstorming and thinking and developing ways and measures that we could offer to our administration on behalf of our faculty. And I hope you'll hear more soon. Our campus is establishing a joint Senate and admin committee that is specifically working with some of the system-wide ideas that are being generated, some of the best ideas from all the campuses and our own. And so I'm hopeful that that's going to result in some positive measures. And so you'll hear more later. You may know, I get a chance to sit on regular weekly COVID-19 executive meetings, and I get to hear, there's a lot of unsung heroes. You just heard about Andy Boyd and Thelma Hurd as just two, and Laura, for example. But I just want to commend the campus efforts to support continuing research on campus. I know some of our faculty are doing that. You may know that through the communications on campus, that testing on campus now with a partnership with UC Davis will have saliva vaccination with a very quick turnaround in results. And for those of you who are going to be regularly on campus, we'll be asking you to be tested every 2 weeks. And again, it just shows how we've really built that infrastructure on our campus for testing. And also on its way is the infrastructure for vaccine delivery. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that soon. Those are all really positive advances as we move towards a fall, resuming a fall that if the conditions allow, the public health conditions allow, can be more of a return to normal. I'm sure we'll all appreciate that. So with that idea of returning to in-person teaching, instructional planning is going on right now. And we are also factoring in contingencies, right? We have this idea of where we'd like to be in the fall. A lot of it might depend on circumstances beyond our control. And then I just want to say one more thing. In memoriam, recently it's come to our attention 3 faculty members who are no longer with us, have passed away. And I just want to briefly mention them. Art Woodward is emeritus faculty, one of the founders of UC Merced. I wasn't here when he was here, but in those very early years, before the campus even opened its doors, he was a very influential figure. Glenn is gone, a teaching professor in economics, lost her life to COVID recently. And then Mark Applebaum, who's a psychology professor at UC San Diego. And why am I talking about a faculty member from UC San Diego? He served as an external member on our CAP committee, Committee on Academic Personnel. CAP, as you know, has an important role in evaluating academic personnel, cases and merits and promotions. And we rely on those external, the goodwill of our colleagues from other campuses that help us, as our campus is still small, to help us with that expertise. He was a current CAP member, and which is, even doubly sad. We'll have a communication coming out about that. But we really depend on our external faculty members on CAP to help us support our personnel processes. And then just lastly, I want to say our Senate and Admin shared governance is very strong here at UC Merced, thanks to Chancellor and the Provost and many other people. We have respectful engagement and goodwill. We don't always agree, but often we do. And it's being able to work closely with our administration and our Senate that I think our campus is strong. And whatever reality throws our way, whatever challenge comes our way, working together with a real commitment to strengthening our community and our values. And so I just want to thank you, Chancellor, and thank you folks for attending this town hall. And hopefully we can answer some questions and share some information so that we're more on the same page as we move into this new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Next, we'd like to hear from the president of our staff assembly, Yesenia Curiel. Yesenia?
Hi, good morning. Buenos días, everybody. My name is Yesenia Curiel, and I use pronouns she, her, and ella. So thank you very much for inviting Staff Assembly to be here and to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing this coming semester. I do want to recognize the fact that I also echo the sentiments of the Chancellor and also of Robin regarding what is happening in our nation. The campus climate issues are something that's, as Staff Assembly, we're constantly taking the pulse in regards to how these things are impacting our staff, from those that are custodial workers to those that are academic advisors. It is something that has taken a significant toll on us. However, I'm also very appreciative of the fact that we have not stopped any of our meetings. Our monthly meetings continue to happen, and they will continue to happen throughout the semester. We really are taking this approach of engaging staff in order to make sure that staff have an opportunity to come to a meeting where they can debrief, where they can engage with certain topics about updates that they want or need. And then we are also moving forward with continuing with staff leadership chats, which is really significant, with the help and support of senior leaders that come to these senior leadership chats in order to engage with staff and answer questions that they ask beforehand. And we are really looking forward to continuing to do that. The next one is going to be February 3rd. I also want to share that we have been invited to the table with senior leadership throughout this last year, and I'm very grateful for that. We've been involved in searches. We've been involved in, as not only a Staff Assembly president for you all, I also serve as the co-chair for Staff and Faculty of Color Association. I've been tapped to serve on the Valuing Black Lives Task Force this last semester, which was something that we appreciated, as well as the People's First Committee. Currently, right now, I'm on the Strategic Planning Governance Committee. One of the other things that I wanted to highlight is that we have representation on Search Committee for the Chief Financial Officer, and as well as the Chief Campus Counsel. And this is very significant for Staff Assembly, because I don't think we have been as involved with the campus since I've been here in the last 5 years. So this is something that's very refreshing and staff really appreciate, and we thank you for that. One thing that I wanted to also mention was that as a staff assembly board, we wanted to really be intentional in understanding what anti-racism was. So currently right now, our board is actually reading the book by Emmanuel Acho, which is Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. And this is something that we hope that all staff have professional opportunities in their units to address equity, diversity, and inclusion strategies, because I think that's one of the key things is that staff want to know how they can get involved. And so that's just an example of something that we're doing. We also are really trying to engage individuals in social interactions. We have a Power Hour Pictionary happening on January 27th, which is really significant because we really want to engage individuals kind of to decompress a little bit about their day in regards to maybe what they might be witnessing on television, to maybe work, or just, you know, handling the remote work schedule. And so I want to end with just reminding people to really take into account that there are a lot of campus resources for staff. I personally use the Calming app. There's our newsletter is going out today or tomorrow. We're including reminders for individuals to make sure that they know that there's resources from Teleadopt, you know, to, you know, like I mentioned, the Calming app, which is something that I utilize. And I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of people who are dealing with COVID in regards to their families, their friends, and it's something that at any point, you know, make sure that you are taking care of yourself, reach out because come to our meetings. We meet the third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. and hopefully we hope to see you next week. And thank you again for the invitation to be here. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yesenia. We really appreciate your participation. We're going to now turn to some questions that we received from faculty and staff over the past week. The first question, Chancellor, for you. You've been here at UC Merced now a little more than 6 months. As an institution, what do you see us doing well, and where do you see areas for improvement?
I apologize. I was muted. Very often, I probably should be. So I want to thank you for the question. I want to just thank my colleagues, Dr. DeLugan, Yesenia, for their remarks and just how impressive they are in the work that they're doing and helping to lead. A few things come to mind, and I think I've been. This group may not be surprised, but you may be surprised to learn that not every university across the country works as efficiently as UC Merced. I think that there's generally a spirit of cooperation. I think that there's, you know, Ed, you're familiar with the small history of the UC Merced called an informal history, the Fairy Shrimp Chronicles. And if you read that book, as I think everyone should, I finished it over the holiday. It was a gift, and it really was a gift to read, to learn the sort of the spirit and the ethos that really permeates sort of UC Merced. It required immense cooperation and support and sacrifice. I see that very much still here in my short time. I see people willing to work late and make phone calls and assume, as I said earlier about Dr. Hurd, other duties as assigned. So that is very much in the sort of the historical DNA that led to the founding of UC Merced. So I think the spirit of cooperation, the willingness to sacrifice with cause, not abusive, but with cause when we need to pull together. I think people have very, very deep personal investments in the success of the university that go well beyond sort of professional requirements. I think people can see the great horizon for UC Merced over the next 30, 50 years with great excitement. People are generally receptive to the truth here. And again, not every campus has that kind of culture and climate where you can be frank and honest, as we were with the recent town halls on financial transparency, where our colleague, Dr. Sneer, had to say, here's what it is. And I thought the faculty responded immensely well. In terms of what we need to get a better, continue to improve our financial accountability and transparency, number one. Number two, we need to complete the strategic planning process. In my opinion, one of the most important things we can do. Why? Because once we chart our path, and we say, here is where we want to be as an academic institution. Here are the faculty we want. Here's the kind of support we want for faculty. Here's the professional development obligation we're making to the staff that come here to continue to develop them. Here's what we're going to do on enrollment management to support the kinds of students that come here. Here's how we want to support graduate students. Here's the kind of housing. Once we make once we codify those commitments and obligations in a document, then we can make the strategic financial investments. And there might be a great many things that we want to do, right? But we look to the plan to say, this is what we collectively agree to, and we make the investments for the resources that we have. And as we grow, those resources will grow, and our investments will grow, and where we make those investments will grow. And so for me, continue transparency on our finances. Again, this has happened during my term, these town halls, these presentations, the invitation for staff council to be a part of every major leadership committee, to have students on our search committees. So working with Yesenia and Dr. DeLugan, we hope, again, as I said earlier, to position ourselves to be greater still. And these are some of the things that we have to do. Again, financial transparency, strategic plan, academic program development, enrollment growth, enrollment management. If we say to a family, we accept your interest in being part of our student academic community, we have an obligation. Que no, Yesenia, decimos, tenemos obligación. We say, entrust us, we trust you, we make a compact. And we want to be that kind of campus, and we are, and we will be even more so. And these are the things that we will work toward as we become, in my opinion, we will be one of the most dynamic, interdisciplinary, impactful, socially conscious, socially just research university of the 21st century.
Thank you. Understanding that we are in a campus-wide planning process, what do you each see as our top priorities, the things that we should be focused on from an administrative standpoint, academic senate, staff assembly standpoint? Chancellor, why don't you lead off?
Okay, I'll be more brief on this answer. Because I think I mentioned some of it in my earlier answer. I think we need to continue to build a strong freshman class academically and numerically. We need to focus on second and third year retention so that the students that come here, we're not losing them. We need to, of course, build our graduate student population. This is something that I was spoken to during my interview process. And then those graduate students that we bring, we need to support them. We need to put them in laboratories with faculty doing research. We need, of course, to continue our drive and our aspirations around medical education. But more, there are other programs that are being developed aside from the medical education around management. And we need to continue to develop those. We need to obviously work toward they're doing the engineering, architectural, design, et cetera, related to the health, behavioral science, medical education building. We need to continue to move in that direction. So once we have the kind of curricular program that we need, we can house that program, house that faculty, house those students into a facility that's built and paid for. We need to, of course, you take advantage of the facilities that we already have. We've built out the 2020. We have magnificent state-of-the-art, leading-edge laboratories, facilities. We need to get our faculty back in there, our graduate students back in there, and we need to provide them. And we have working with Dr. DeLugan and her leadership team, letters were sent to the provost and I asking for additional resources, asking for additional grants, asking for partnership grants, instrumentation grants, and I said yes. We're going to give the faculty those dollars and those resources to build their portfolios of research and their impact. And then, of course, we made the commitment to provide a substantial amount of funds to acquire the equipment for the BSL-3 lab. This is a state-of-the-art facility that universities across the world would covet. And here we didn't have the equipment. This is the point I'm making. If we're going to be a research university, we need to make the strategic investments in the research infrastructure to give the faculty the kinds of facilities, amenities they need to prosecute their work. And that work brings graduate students notoriety, undergraduates. And then finally, I'd like to dramatically, as you know, Ed, we're going to work to raise a substantial amount of outside philanthropic dollars. We need to build our athletic profile, our athletic facilities. I'll just end with this. I will challenge the camp. We need to think, we are the only UC campus that doesn't have a facility to host our commencement, our graduation, to host a convocation of faculty. This is so we've got to now begin to build out the supplemental facilities structure to complement the faculty, the staff, and the students that we're going to bring here, to give them nothing less than a world-class educational experience in all that sort of invokes. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear from Dr. DeLugan and Yesenia.
Okay, I'll go next. So the things I'm going to mention are things that we're doing and things that we can continue to do and do better and do more of. The faculty have communicated their strong interest in getting us to R1 status, Carnegie R1 status. We're currently R2. Reaching R1 will put us in the same category as our sister universities, campuses in the UC system. That means supporting faculty research, as the Chancellor just mentioned. And we really appreciate that increase in funding in our campus-based faculty research award pool. Also diversifying our faculty, it's very tied into also that research excellence as well. Again, things that we've been doing, we have commitment to, and we will continue to do that. We have a diverse student body, we have a fair diverse staff. We need to have diverse, more increasingly diverse faculty. We need to, part tied to the research goals is to grow our programs, our research centers, new schools. All of that's on our horizon, and it's close. Those are growing pains also that accompany those big moves, but they're necessary, and we're already imagining and taking steps towards that growth. And then the last thing, and something that's particularly important to the work that I've been doing on this campus, but to others as well, is community engagement. Community engagement is, and we can talk about our campus community, but I'm really talking about our external stakeholders, Merced and Central Valley stakeholders. We can show our value to the region and to Merced in so many ways, through our teaching, through our research, through our service. We do a lot, and I think we should continue to make that commitment. There's a community and labor research center now getting off the ground, which again is, I think, an important expression of what's possible when we turn our research expertise to our region and engage with local stakeholders. And so those are the areas that I think that really stand out to me, quickly coming to my mind during this town hall. And I would just acknowledge that these are not distant goals or something that we're not familiar with. They're all things that are in our DNA that we're just going to continue to invest in and advance. And that becomes a really important part of who we are as a UC Merced campus. Thank you.
Yesenia.
So I think one of the things that staff that I'm looking is in regards to having continuing to have access to professional development because of all these new things that are happening. I think we as staff would like to make sure that we continue to have access and creative ways now of accessing different professional development opportunities. And that's something that through COVID, travel is not an option, but I know that there's now a urgency for people to have access to webinars and so forth. I think another key thing is really ensuring the staff engagement, which like the Chancellor mentioned, there have been a lot of changes that he's brought on in regards to having us be involved from search committees to, when there are major decisions being made. I think when I look back at the staff engagement survey from back almost 2 years ago now, because we're going to have another one through the Office of the President this spring, is staff wanted transparency, and that's something that we're getting. Staff wanted to get engagement. They wanted to have access to senior leadership, and that's something that we hope continues to happen, because I think that's a key to ensure that staff feel engaged, the staff feel part of all these new changes that are happening, because a lot of these changes and with all the national things that are happening can cause some issues with us just finding that balance. But I think if we continue to stay as committed and a part of what is happening, I think that's going to continue to encourage staff to help the growth that is yet to come, right? Because I think if we all know what our place is and where and how we're involved and how we're valued, then we can all move forward together. And I think that's a key thing. And I think I just want to say that another thing that I'm hoping that will continue, or something that will come forth, is making sure that we are preparing staff that are supervisors, managers, so they know how to continue to support their staff that are dealing with various issues. And so I think that's one of the things that over the next semester, over the next couple of years, we have a lot of uncertainties. And so I think that's going to be key, is to making sure that we're preparing staff in this journey as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yesenia.
Ed, can I take a moment of privilege, Ed? I'm sorry. I just want to support comments by Yesenia, and this is why I said very explicitly in my opening remarks about the importance of providing staff professional ladders of opportunity and compensating them appropriately. And I couldn't agree more. And we're going to do a few things. We have an institute that we're developing right now for faculty and staff that we hope to begin to inaugurate this fall. But I also want to underscore Dr. DeLugan's point, and she mentioned about the development of programs in schools and the big lifts. And I just want to affirm and support that kind of ambition, because I agree with her. And I think there are programs and perhaps schools that we need to think about inaugurating and here at UC Merced, like our sister campuses who are R1 campuses, and they are national research universities, that is not unrelated to the size of their program offerings and the number of their schools and colleges on their respective campuses. So that's something that's got to be part of our goals moving forward. And so I think what I hope those that are listening in see is that there's great alignment between my thoughts and those of Dr. DeLugan's and the leadership of the staff council, as well as our cabinet that you are a part of, Ed, and how we now move. We've completed 2020, and so now I'm going to start talking about UC Merced 3.0, 2030.
Thank you. We talked a lot about planning for the return to in-person instruction. Specifically, a question about the return to in-person as it relates to in-person work for faculty and staff. I'd like to ask the panelists, what challenges do we see for the faculty and staff as we begin to plan for coming back to work, back to instruction in the fall of 21? Robin?
DeLugan?
I'll go first. I think many of us are eager to get back to normal. We've learned a lot. I haven't been teaching during COVID, but I've been talking to my colleagues, faculty colleagues. It's challenging. Maybe we found some really innovative ways to enhance our teaching when we get back to normal, but in general, it's been very challenging. And so I think that I'll say first, I think many people are looking forward to that assurance that we can come back to our in-person teaching. That said, there's conversations system-wide, starting academic council. All the Senate representatives meet monthly, and this is where we see where there's some common concerns. And so some people want to know, will faculty be obligated? How will they be, required to come back, even though everybody's so uncertain right now about vaccine, about will everybody be vaccinated? Will it be effective? Where will the status of the pandemic be in fall? So we'll be planning to be in person, but yet there's that trepidation about what will the conditions be? Will we feel confident enough about those conditions? And so I know those are the concerns that some faculty are beginning to offer. I'm sure that we will be, in our instructional planning, we'll be thinking about all of those. But yet we also see the importance of coming back to normal. We have this beautiful campus. It's that's almost vacated, not vacated. There are people working there and doing research there, but we're not there. And, so even though we've made the best of this for almost a year now, a little short of a year, I think by fall we'll all be ready for some normal. So I'm always going to keep the faculty concerns foremost in my conversations with our divisional council, with our Senate, as well as when we were talking with academic leadership about instructional planning. But I would say it's mostly being sure that the infrastructure we have on campus supports that return to campus, and hopefully some assurance from the public health standpoint that it won't be a risky endeavor.
I just want to also highlight one thing that we've heard from staff is really childcare as being something where even though, schools might be open, but just needing the flexibility, because many people have become caregivers, not only for their children, but also for their parents. And so I think that's one of the biggest concerns, that if we are going to be back on campus, there's still some of us that might have to do some caregiving. And I know that a number of staff have had to leave the area in order to provide child caring outside of the area, because they just needed to be closer to family, relatives. So I think just that's going to be a key, is making sure that as we're moving into stages, that we really have adequate resources and support for staff, and also the flexibility for staff, so they know that they can have conversations about just, accommodations as we're transitioning back to staff. But I know that for myself, I'm about less than 15 minutes away. I'm excited and looking forward to being on our campus and connecting with each of you as well. Thank you.
Robin, you mentioned vaccinations, and we've gotten several questions from folks about the vaccine protocol. And I guess the question, maybe Chancellor, you could provide an update on what are the plans for vaccinations of employees, of students, and whether they will be mandatory.
Right. Well, let me talk a little bit about our intended capacity to provide immunization, and then comment at the end about whether or not it will be mandatory. So of course we do not have a medical school, and so we don't have what the capacity that a UCLA or Irvine, San Diego might have. So we're having to stand up very quickly, and anyone involved with personnel here or in this area, here at UC Merced or in this area, understand that there's limits to the kind of professionals you have access to hire with certain qualifications in this area of this part of the valley in particular. So it's not that you can just sort of hire 200 nurses and they're available. So we're having to stand up the ability. My hope is that we will have a closed pod, and where we can provide immunization for our first, according to the tiers, right? Our faculty and staff that fall into certain categories of the various tiers. And then eventually for students, as well as we are currently in discussions with UC Health to provide service support here on our campus, as well with some of our personnel potentially. This is still being discussed, and to provide a sort of modified open pod to be of service to Dr. DeLugan's point, to be of greater service through this kind of engagement of our technical capabilities as part of UC to help immunize people from Merced and Merced County, working with the county, with Jim Brown and his leadership, and the city, Mayor Matt Serrato, and that group. And again, I think to Dr. DeLugan's point, make abundantly clear the value of having a UC research university here in Merced. And so I believe that some version of what I'm describing, Ed, will come to pass. And but things have changed very dramatically, I think, in the last week related to trying to stand up open, closed pods. As you know, the delivery mechanism for the vaccine is the MCE, and we've already received a small amount of vaccine, and I believe we have vaccinated those that work in student health, and so we are moving in this direction, a closed pod, ideally for our campus, as well as be of service to a modified open pod to our city and to our county, and that is what a leading university, public university, should be doing. Related to the mandatory, my understanding is that it will not be mandated. This is my understanding, and if a chief of staff, Dr. Putney, is available, she can amplify and or correct my response. My understanding is it won't be. It will be strongly encouraged, obviously, not mandated. But if you don't take, you have to submit an attestation of declination. Which is to say something you're deliberately declining to be immunized, and then you will be required to continue to wear mask and PPE. I suspect, having said that, many of us who plan to be vaccinated will continue to wear PPE and exercise good social distancing and what have you for the foreseeable future until an appropriate amount of sort of, herd immunity is accomplished. And then this will be part of, how we live in the future. So that is my understanding, and anyone that can improve on that description is welcome to.
You mentioned medical school, the fact that we don't have one. Several folks wanted to know if there are any updates you can provide on medical education at UC Merced.
Right. Well, this is, I think, one to Dr. DeLugan's earlier, I think, point about the growth of the campus. This is one of the, this is one of the most important, I think, efforts for the university for its future. So we were for the first time ever, of course, through the tremendous leadership of Representative Gray, there was a permanent appropriation in the state budget of a small amount to be divided between UC San Francisco Fresno and UC Merced. And so that is really the first sort of permanent operational dollars that would serve this purpose that we have had. So added to that is about a $7.8 million approval from the Board of Regents that I requested to do the design, the environmental impact, the architecture, and some other requirements in order to study the feasibility of the structure on our campus where we have identified an area. That my understanding is that engineering report, analysis, etc., will be completed early in the fall. That will give us what they refer to as a development design standard, and or for the layman like us, shovel ready. So once we have that, we'll know what it's going to cost, what it's going to look like, where it's going to go, and how to build it. And then you go out for bid for a company that can construct. My preliminary understanding is it will be somewhere between a $2 to $220 million structure, and this will house psychology. This will house our public health program ambitions beyond what we have, medical education. And then we will be part of this PRIME and what's called the San Joaquin Valley PRIME program. Incidentally, the PRIME program was just added about $15 million in the current bill signed by the governor. And so trying to identify people from the Valley who want to be primarily, in our case, primary care practitioners, and then working with UC San Francisco and Fresno to continue their education and then do their internship here in Merced, in Stanislaus, in Turlock, in Chowchilla, in Madera, in Clove, etc., and bring and be the catalyst with our partners, UC San Francisco, in Fresno, and really be a partner in changing the quality of life for the future of this valley indefinitely. And that is truly transformative, and we have an opportunity to be the tip of the spear. And I hope, and I fully intend to be that, and that will be a legacy you talk about a university that cares. UC Merced will help to care for the valley. And so that is about where we're at right now. And then, of course, all the academic programming and the staff that we will need and the faculty that we will need, we're going to have to begin to look at those operating sort of dimensions once we're underway in the construction, so that day one we have the right faculty, the right staff, the right operating dollars, and the right way to support that unit to deliver the services it's intended. I'll just say this in ending, because Ed, you've heard me talk about that book, The Informal History, which I think is not insignificant, was led by a faculty member, but mostly written by students. And if you read that book, you will see I'm talking about 1988, 89, 90, 90, you will see that it was always the intention that UC Merced would have a dedicated medical education program. So we now have the privilege to bring that to fruition.
Thank you. Switching to another subject, there was a very unfortunate incident over the winter break that led to you and Provost Canfield issuing a statement about where UC Merced stands on hatred. Could you please provide any more comment on that, possibly provide an update?
Right. Well, as you know, this is now a personnel issue, and as a rule, we do not comment on personnel matters as the due process is taking place. It was a most unfortunate circumstance and development for many outside as well as inside. We of course, we're a university. We believe in the principle of a freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but we also understand the need for civil discourse and to create an environment where hate and discrimination have no place, have no quarter. And so the process is underway. There are policies on our campus that determine how these matters are inquired, investigated, pursued, etc., and that is underway. And we will wait to hear back from the appropriate responsible adjudicators of that in our the responsible academic sort of offices involved in that process. And we will wait to see how this is resolved. But to be sure that the provost and I, as well as some on this call, we made very clear our reaction to those images and what they invoke and what they imply, and do not believe that is reflective of the spirit and the values of our campus.
Could I add that a little bit? Real quick?
Please.
Just to say that in the spring semester coming up, we're going to hear from Associate Vice Chancellor, Chief Diversity Officer, Danya Matos, who's organizing some campus events, Zoom campus events on free speech versus hate speech. Those conversations, we have to know where would we draw, where do we cross a line in our quest for free speech. And there'll be some other opportunities for conversations on campus that can address some of these difficult themes around why this arose to be such a problem, not only on our campus, but impacting people off of our campus as well. And so just to say that we all can always learn more, we can be reminded, we can reinforce our values of inclusion and respect.
Yesenia, is there anything you'd like to add from the staff assembly viewpoint?
And my dogs are in the office. So one thing that I do want to say is that I think it's really critical that we heard from the leadership, that we heard from the chancellor and the provost, because ultimately for staff, we're sometimes in a situations where faculty members make comments or individuals of higher positions make comments, and sometimes there's staff that have a lot of fear of retaliation when it comes down to hearing or witnessing discriminatory comments, racist comments, things that are shouldn't be in the workplace or anywhere at all. But I'm happy that there is communication in regards to what is happening. This is a matter with HR right now. But the fact that your comments when we first started, Chancellor, is something that for me as a staff member, hearing that is very powerful, because it really allows me to understand that this is a welcoming environment for me and for the rest of the folks that might feel at any point targeted. So thank you.
We've mentioned community a lot on this call today. Chancellor, could you please briefly comment on the housing survey we're about to launch later today and why it's important for our campus community relations?
Right. Well, thank you for asking that question, Ed. Some of you, some on this call might know although I have not been here very, very long, I'll stop saying that relatively soon. I have realized the scarcity of housing, as well as to our colleague Yesenia earlier, saying how families may have to go so far away for certain amenities or care or childcare, what have you. And so when we talk about community, there's generally a sense of some physical proximity. And but if we haven't the housing, the resources, the medical services, the quality of education, and so this is what a University of California can do in helping transform a community. But what we wanted to do is, I understand that the survey will go out later today. I asked for a survey to be developed, the right questions be posed in the instrument. I understand, Ed, and you can affirm with, I guess, the nod of your head, that the survey is going out to ask us, not just those that live here, but here in and around Merced. Mariposa, Cathy's Valley, that's not terribly far, but we have people even further out than that. It's interesting. I lived in Houston, Texas, and people had to live 45 an hour and a half away for, and then they would be in traffic for 2 hours. The 99 can be very inhospitable, but does it have to be? So we're going to urge full participation. And once we receive the responses from faculty and staff, we will create a mechanism to disseminate those sort of findings and share with you what we learn about housing. And there are some things that are developing in the city of Merced and could be developing adjacent to the campus that might dramatically change the ability for faculty and staff to consider perhaps living closer to the campus. As Yesenia said, a few 15 minutes away, very convenient. I'm sure that that's very helpful. But I think everyone is cognizant of the limits. And so I'm interested in hearing directly from you. And so that when I'm speaking to a Jim Brown, the CEO of the county, or a Mayor Serrato, or Congressman Acosta, or Assemblyman Gray, or Senator Caballero, and to say, look, here's how we need you to help our campus, our people, if you want them to be available to conduct the kind of work, research, and service and engagement that elected leaders want us to in order to help transform our part of the valley. So I look forward to hearing from people directly, rather than conjecture or trying to surmise what they may or may not think about this particular issue. And I'd like to thank, of course, Ed Klotzbier and his team, who has really been involved in helping to put this together. So thank you, Ed.
Well, thank you, Chancellor. We're right at the noon hour. We have one last question for all three of you. We've talked earlier about, record enrollment, record applications. As we think about coming out of this post-pandemic world in which we now live, what can we all do together collectively to make sure that we bring in the class of 21-22 to UC Merced?
I'd like to answer last. I'll defer to my two colleagues.
When you say bring them in, what do you mean? Bring them in together, create a community, get back in person as soon as we can. I think that would be very helpful. Can you clarify for me?
Sure, I think the question has to do with, as we plan together for in-person instruction, how do we let students, their families know what in-person instruction looks like at UC Merced, to make sure that students aren't shying away, they're not afraid, that this is a safe and welcoming place for them, for the students to come fall of 21.
Well, I think your shop, communications, that part of your world, Ed, has a very important role there. The same concerns that faculty might have about returning, I think parallel what the students or their families might have too. So to me, and I think we do a pretty good job of that, I think that regular communication, creating those forums for input from that constituency, students and their parents, so that we can alleviate concerns or answer questions, will be very important.
I do want to make a plug. So I also serve on an organization on campus, which is called the Language Accessibility Committee, that specifically focuses right now on ensuring the language and the cultural competency of translated materials, because I think that's going to be the key. And we're seeing that where if we have material that's translated into multiple languages, where we can really educate parents, their family members of the students on how safe it is to be on campus, that is going to make a significant change to the type of motivation a parent can make to persuade their student to stay in here and stay committed to our campus. So I think really ensuring that we have as much material in different languages, because we really are going to be welcoming a lot of diverse students. And so I think making sure that staff have resources to make sure that that is happening. So I do want to go ahead and let you all know that we are going to be launching a kind of language certificate program in order to make staff more competent and comfortable and confident in when they're interacting with Spanish-speaking parents. And we're looking to also offer this for staff that speak Hmong and maybe other languages. But I think the key is to make sure that information is really given out to people in different languages. So then it's a team, it's a community that's supporting the student. Thank you.
Chancellor, last word?
We have to do everything my two colleagues have indicated. But first, we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure, the facilities, the materials, the disposable, the staff, that they're taken care of and safeguarded in order for when we communicate this sort of safe environment to our families, the students and their families to return, they have complete confidence in what we're purporting to do to protect them in the fall. I think that we will working together, and we will because of the professionalism and the care of everyone on this call. My two colleagues, my two panelist colleagues, certainly that are so committed, so deeply committed to the success of our campus, to the care of our faculty, our staff, and the well-being of our students. That's why we'll succeed.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the panelists for this hour. We've gone a little over, I apologize. But to everyone who joined us, thanks for all that you do to support our campus community, especially our students. Have a great day.